Hello and welcome back to One Wrong Number, Chapter 3, A Mother's Response. Summary. Mama Inko knows she hasn't been a good mother, but she still tries, until her baby tries again, and she reaches out to Ayazawa Shota, who has given her a way to ensure her baby's happiness, even if it means without her. Content warning, trigger warning. Discussions of suicidal ideation, suicidal thoughts, and postpartum depression. There's a note. A lot of what follows is from my own experiences. My partner was an abusive asshole. He's getting help now, but that doesn't erase the pain he caused. And my first baby? Well, I guess you're getting a confessional there too. Please don't read if topics of depression, suicidal ideation, or suicidal thoughts are something you struggle with. This will not be a happy chapter. Also, there's talk of childbirth and complications that come with it, so don't read if you're squeamish about that. When she had been small, her family was a broken thing. Her mother was a hero, a popular one at that, and her father was a businessman of some sorts or other. She never really did get the chance to ask him. Her mother had given her and her brother up for adoption after her father's death, with a smile like the one she showed to the public. It made her hate her mother, and hate heroes a little too, 'cause what good was a hero that didn't even try to save her own family, that gave them up rather than fight for them? Perhaps that is why she tried so very hard to steer Izuku away from heroes. Perhaps it was because her own marriage was a wreck, a sham of the word. She'd met Hisashi in college. He was older, a bad boy that everyone knew was into something shady, but no one talked about in more than rumors. Maybe she thought she could fix him. Maybe she thought, he loves me, he'll change for me. Maybe she didn't care because it was nice to have someone, anyone, pay attention to poor, plain Shimura Inko. Whatever the reason, she'd been more than happy to shed her family name, to become Midoriya Inko, and live the life she thought she wanted. There were cracks even then, she realized years later. Hisashi had a temper. A wild, uncontrollable beast that made his fire-breathing quirk seem all the more fitting. Everything she did was wrong. If she didn't clean the apartment to perfection, to exacting standards that seemed to change every time, he yelled that she was stupid, that she was a bad wife, that she should be grateful he didn't smack her around like all the other whores he'd laid with in the past. If she didn't clean, then he yelled, called her lazy, ungrateful, and asked why he even married her. Sometimes she asked herself that same question, and then he'd turn around and remind her of why she did love him. He was sweet when he wasn't drinking, a consummate gentleman that made her feel special, made her feel wanted, made her feel like she was the only woman who could make him feel this way, even if she suspected that wasn't true. She pushed through partially because who else would look at a plain person like her and see someone that was attractive? No one. She pushed through because he didn't have as many bad days as good. She pushed through because that was what was expected of women. She pushed through because she did love him. They both talked about children, about the quirks they could possibly have, with fire-breathing and fire quirks in general running on Hisashi's side of the family, and with gravity-affecting quirks running on her side of the family. She had fantasies of what a little boy with Hisashi's curly hair would look like. She never entertained fantasies of what a little girl would look like, because truthfully she didn't want one. Not that she would abandon a little girl if they did have one, just that the idea of going through it all again, having to watch a little girl who looked exactly like her, got teased for being too plain, too ordinary to attract the kind of attention that other girls easily attracted, was not one she liked. But she never considered the problems that would come with the baby. Too lost in how it would somehow fix everything that seemed to be going wrong with her relationship with her husband. Children changed people. She knew that from her own parents. Surely it would change Hisashi into the kind, considerate man he was some of the time into all of the time, right? And yet, as time passed and no child appeared, she began to wonder, is it my fault? Is it me? Am I too broken to give the only thing that makes me of worth? She tried not to think of it, even as she kept working. Another problem Hisashi had with her. She wouldn't quit her well-paying job as a legal secretary and rely on him only. because for one thing, she liked her work, and for another, it made her feel like a hero when something she did allowed the legal team to get a win in. And then she started getting tired, really tired. Her feet ached all the time, but she thought it was just due to the heels that never fit right. It was fine. Everything was fine until she started getting very, very sick. Every day for the last 2 weeks, she couldn't keep anything down besides miso soup, and it was starting to make her feel like she was dying. So she went to her family doctor, a man by the name of Tsubasa. She didn't like him. He creeped her out with the way he stared at her every time she did go, as if he was trying to stare directly into her soul. He took a few blood tests and then a urine sample, and then he came back sporting a grin as if he was very pleased with the results. "Well, I've got good news and bad news for you, Midoriya-san." What is it?" "You've got a 9-month virus. Good news is that it looks like you're about 6 months into it. So only 3 left to go." She stared for a moment, confused. Was she dying and this was his attempt to soften the blow? Because if it was a terrible way to do it. And then her brain kicked in. 9 months. The time it took for a baby. She was pregnant? She supposed she should be happy she hadn't gained weight, hadn't been sick up until recently, but all she could think of in that moment was, I didn't know. How could I not know? She was giddy with the thought of telling Hisashi, though, and then disappointed with his reaction. "Are you sure? And it's mine, right?" "Hisashi, you know I wouldn't sleep around. I'm not that kind of girl." "That's what they all say." "Well, fine. Just don't expect any special treatment." And she didn't get any special treatment. Not at work, where she was still expected to do her job, even as she told him that she'd have to cut back her hours to not be stressed out. And not at home, where as Hisashi got more and more antsy about every small thing. When she brought up the supplies they would need for a baby, he'd shout at her that they aren't made of money, which was true, she supposed, but it wasn't like she was asking for designer clothes or diamond-studded soothers. Just diapers that she knew that they would need, a crib that she knew they would need, and enough clothes for a baby to be comfortable. Maybe it was this pressure, this realization that she was going to be responsible for another life that started the thought of, why couldn't I have known about him sooner? And she somehow was certain that it was a him, even if she hadn't gotten the ultrasound back yet, because 3 months was such a short time to prepare. And then, at the 7-month mark, she felt pain in her lower abdomen, pain like no other, and was rushed to the hospital from the office. The doctor, thankfully not Dr. Tsubasa, told her she was in preterm labor and they were going to give her something to stop it. She was so afraid then, afraid that her baby would be born far too early and far too small. Thankfully her labor stopped. She'd rubbed her just now getting larger stomach and told her baby to wait a little more. She wasn't ready yet. And then it happened again at the 8-month mark. She started to wonder if her baby hated her, because why else was he giving her such trouble? But again they were able to stop the labor. When she reached the 9-month mark, she was far more ready for the baby. Well, as ready as one could be, with still no clothes, no crib, and no welcoming feeling at the apartment for the baby that was going to be coming home soon. Hisashi had been spending more and more time away, which was both a good thing and a bad thing. Good because she didn't have to feel like she was walking on eggs constantly, and bad because she worried, what if he found someone better? When the due date came and went with no sign of the baby, she started to get irritated. A week passed before the doctor ordered her to be given her first induction. Nothing. She started to worry because the previously active baby was not as active. 2 weeks passed and 4 more inductions. Still nothing. Now she was really starting to worry. 3 weeks past her due date and she was starting to wonder if her baby had died, and that was why there was no labor. He wasn't moving at all now. The doctor ordered one last induction, and if it didn't take, then a C-section. She was supposed to go in for it in the morning. That night the pain came again. She was driven to the hospital and finally heard the nurse say, "You're 6 meters dilated. Too much for any pain relief. I'm sorry." So all she felt afterwards was pain beyond description. Then finally a quiet. They wouldn't let her see her baby. Why wouldn't they let her see him? They took him, and she heard them saying, "Come on, little guy, breathe." She felt like she couldn't breathe herself as they worked on him. When she finally heard it, the cry was weak, almost non-existent. But the tears came as he was put on her chest, looking like an alien with his almost gray skin, long limbs, big green eyes, and pointed head. But he was hers. Hisashi didn't come to visit. Not in the first hour after it hit her that it was real, that her Izuku was finally here, too tall for a newborn, and far, far too quiet. And yet he was still here. She should be happy. She isn't, because Izuku can't breastfeed. He has an overbite that makes latching almost impossible for him. And a part of her is kind of happy about that, because she can't help the feelings of resentment that come over her whenever he can't latch on. This is supposed to be a natural, normal thing. It's supposed to be a thing that bonds her to her baby, and yet, when she looks at him, all she can think of is that same feeling of, what was I thinking? She has a moment one night of holding him in her arms, where she fantasizes about putting her hand over that small mouth and nose, and just fixing the problem that he'd had initially when he was born. And then she feels guilty because she loved him, even more than she loved Hisashi. She loved him, and she vowed she'd be a better mother than her own. Izuku was going to fix things. Izuku was her baby, her miracle. But when she got home after almost a month of having to stay in the hospital because Izuku wasn't able to gain weight because he couldn't latch, and finally someone suggested supplementing with formula, and that finally got him to gain the pound they wanted him to gain before they let him go home, the apartment was cold and there was dust everywhere. A note on the counter told her what she'd feared. Hisashi had left her, had left them. Her Izuku hadn't fixed a thing. She wanted to rage and scream and be angry, but all she could feel was relief. Relief that she wouldn't have to walk on eggs anymore. Relief that she no longer had to fear his hair-trigger temper. And she got to know her little Izuku more. She got to smile as he did everything early. He was rolling over by the first month, something Mitsuki didn't believe her about until she showed her. He was rolling everywhere but 3 months. By the 7th-month mark, he was pulling himself forward by his arms. It made her proud as he met milestone after milestone at a record pace. And then at 4 it all stopped. Because at 4, Katsuki and most of his other little friends had their quirks. And yet Izuku never showed a single sign. Not of being able to affect small objects' gravity, or attract small objects like her quirk registry said. Not able to float a little off the floor like her mother had been able to do. Not a lick of smoke curling from his throat the way Hisashi said happened before his first real fire breathing. Nothing. At 4.5, she took him to the doctor. The same doctor that creeped her out, Tsubasa. And she learned the truth. Her little miracle, her world, her Izuku would never have a quirk. And for a moment she sympathizes with her own mother, 'cause how's she supposed to deal with that? She thinks maybe he would be better off with someone who could understand. And then she kills that thought dead. She promised she would be a better mother, and she will. She'll always support him. Or she tries, but she keeps getting it wrong. She knows the second she said, "I'm sorry," instead of "yes, you can," when her son asked if he could be a hero, that she'd broken something in him. Something she thinks might not be fixable. And she knows that something is happening at school because he comes home with burned uniforms, with bruises she can see just peeking out under formerly covered skin that her son quickly recovers. She's not stupid, but when she goes with her concerns to the school, she gets the "boys will be boys," or "quirkless people are more sensitive." But she doesn't know if that is true. She's never met a quirkless person before her son. She sees how it drags on him, how every day is a struggle for him, and she wants to ask, "How can I help?" And yet she doesn't ask, because it's a futile gesture. He won't say anything, or he will, and it will kill her that she can't do a thing to help him. And then one day at work, while on lunch break, she hears the voice coming from "Put Your Hands Up" radio segment called "Reach Out." And she hears him say that he's sorry, that he won't be a burden to her for much longer, and she sobs because how is she supposed to fix this? Her baby comes home later with a man that looks like a hobo and introduces himself as the hero who responded to the call, Eraserhead. He gives her a knowing look and a card with his number. "Call if it gets worse. I can help, but only if you let me." and she hopes that she won't have to call, but she saw the way her baby's eyes had lost their gleam. She thinks she knows that suicidal people don't just magically decide to get better overnight, and yet she hopes desperately that she can be enough. Late at night, Inko jolted awake with a heavy feeling in her chest, a mother's instinct whispering, "Check on him." She padded quickly to Izuku's room, rehearsing the apology she'd make when he inevitably stirred and told her she was fussing too much. He was always a messy sleeper, limbs flung wide in every direction like a tiny tangled starfish. She smiled until she got close enough to see the nearly empty pill bottle on the floor. Her heart stopped. She snatched it up with shaking fingers. Prescription sleep aids. Hers. She hadn't touched them in months. The bottle had been nearly full. Now, maybe a quarter left. Maybe less. And Izuku's breathing was slow. Too slow. Too shallow. Her chest locked up with panic. She scrambled to the kitchen, snatched the card off the fridge with trembling hands, and dialed the number. Picked up on the first ring. "Yeah?" came Aizawa's voice, groggy but alert in a heartbeat. He took some pills. My sleeping meds. What do I do?" Her voice cracked. There was a pause. Sharp inhale. Paper rustled. Something heavy thudded. "Shit. Okay. Do you know how many?" I don't know. The bottle was almost full. I only ever took a few. Now there's barely anything left." "All right. Listen closely. We're going to make him throw up. You need 2 large glasses of warm water. Dump in as much salt as you can. Tablespoons, not teaspoons. Stir until it's dissolved. He has to drink them. It's going to taste like hell, but it'll force his body to reject what he swallowed." She was already in the kitchen, hands fumbling for salt. Glasses. It splashed as she poured, salt crystals sticking to her sweaty palms. She was crying and shaking and trying to stay steady for her son. She rushed back to the room. "Izuku, baby, wake up! Please wake up!" He stirred, eyes glassy. "Mom?" "Drink this, sweetheart. Just drink, please." She tipped the glass to his lips. He gagged but sipped. She coaxed, whispered soothing words, begged him. Halfway through the second glass, he choked, then convulsed forward and vomited hard. It was everywhere, the sheets, the floor, himself, but Inko sobbed in relief. "It worked," she whispered. "It worked." On the phone, Aizawa's voice cut through the haze. "Good. Don't let him fall back asleep. Help is on the way. Just keep him upright. Keep talking to him." She didn't stop whispering, rocking him gently, murmuring apologies and I love yous as he clung weakly to consciousness. Izuku lay in the bed, connected to monitors, stable, safe, for now. Inko sat beside him, hands knotted in her lap. Aizawa stood by the door, silent, arms crossed. "I'm a failure," she whispered. Her voice was nearly gone from sobbing. "No," Aizawa said flatly. "Your mother, doing her best." "But what if my best isn't enough?" A pause, then she lifted her gaze, red-rimmed eyes meeting his. "Can heroes take in children?" Aizawa's brow lifted slightly. "Yes, it's rare, but it happens. There's a system for it." Her lip trembled. "Because I can't do this anymore. I want to. I love him more than anything, but I can't be what he needs. He needs someone who gets it, who understands what it's like to feel broken and still push forward. You saved him, not just tonight, but on that rooftop too. You saw him when no one else did. Please," her voice cracked, "please save him in a way I can't. Please be the hero I can't be." A long silence. Aizawa walked over, crouched down beside her, put a hand gently on her shoulder. His grip was steady, grounding. "You're not giving up," he said quietly. "You're asking for help. That's what heroes do, too." Fresh tears streamed down her cheeks. "I'll talk to Nedzu," he promised. We'll make sure he's not alone. It wasn't everything, but it was something. And sometimes something is all a mother can ask for. And underneath is another note. The quote from the doctor is really what my doctor said to me with my first. I never knew whether I wanted to hit him or laugh. As for my first baby, he really did try to come early twice, and then went 3.5 weeks overdue. So he had almost a whole extra month to grow. It meant that he was in the top 98th percentile for height, bottom third for weight, and made people think I was starving him to death. He had just so many problems, and as a new mom, thoughts of, why did I do this? Why do I think I could? Would he be better off with a better mom? They still haunt me even now that he's a teenager. Makes me feel so old, still checking on him every night after he's asleep, just to ensure he's still breathing, because I had a moment of weakness. Postpartum depression is a bitch. And that's the end of chapter 3.